think guidance is good, and I think dads are always a little bit more, I remember my dad was always a little bit.
Jason Statham, the action star known for his daring stunts and relentless characters, recently proved that his heroism goes far beyond the big screen. When the beloved actor learned about a terminally ill fan's final wish, he didn't just acknowledge it. He made it his mission to turn her last dream into an unforgettable reality. What began as a simple letter from a devoted fan transformed into an extraordinary day that touched the hearts of everyone involved and left a lasting legacy of compassion and love. Fiona Miller, a 19-year-old from a picturesque village in England, had spent much of her teenage years battling leukemia. Despite her illness, Fiona was full of life and positivity, finding joy in the little things, especially action movies. Among all the Hollywood stars she admired, Jason Statham stood out as her ultimate favorite. She loved his rugged determination, his wit, and the way he always fought for the underdog in his films. In moments when her treatments were most grueling, Fiona often found herself rewatching his movies, drawing strength from the larger-than-life characters he portrayed. Her bedroom walls were covered in posters of Jason's films like The Transporter and Fast and Furious 7. A signed photo of him, gifted to her by a family friend years earlier, held a special place on her nightstand. To Fiona, Jason wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol of resilience and courage, traits she fought to embody every day. As her condition worsened, Fiona confided in her sister Claire about her biggest dream: to meet Jason Statham. "I just want to thank him for helping me get through the hardest times," she said. Claire, determined to fulfill her sister's wish, wrote an emotional letter to Jason, detailing Fiona's battle and the profound impact his films had on her. She sent the letter off, hoping against hope that it might reach him. The letter eventually made its way to Jason Statham's team, and when Jason read it, he was immediately struck by Fiona's story. Her strength, positivity, and admiration for his work moved him deeply. "This isn't something I can just send an autograph for," he told his team. "I need to meet her." Jason cleared his schedule and began planning a trip to Fiona's village. He wanted the visit to be special, so he worked with his team to prepare personalized gifts and even brought along a small crew to help create an unforgettable experience. He insisted that the visit be a surprise, ensuring Fiona wouldn't know until he showed up at her door. The day of the visit arrived, and Jason, dressed casually but unmistakably himself, stepped out of a sleek black car and walked up to the Millers' modest home. Claire answered the door, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Jason Statham?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Jason smiled warmly. "I hear there's someone here I need to meet," he said. Claire ushered him inside, leading him to the living room where Fiona was resting on the couch. As Jason entered, Fiona looked up, her eyes widening in shock. "No way," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jason knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. "It's me," he said, "and I've been dying to meet you." Jason didn't just stop by for a quick visit. He spent the entire day with Fiona and her family, making sure every moment was filled with joy and laughter. He came bearing gifts: a signed leather jacket from The Transporter, a personalized poster from Fast and Furious 7, and even a replica of the car he drove in the movie. "I heard you're a bit of an action fan," he said with a grin. Fiona's face lit up as she hugged the jacket tightly. "This is the best day of my life," she said, tears streaming down her face. But Jason wasn't done yet. He had planned something truly special, a chance for Fiona to star in her own action scene. With the help of his team, he set up a makeshift set in the Millers' backyard, complete with props and a camera. Together, Jason and Fiona choreographed a playful fight scene where she defeated him with a dramatic karate chop. "You're a natural," Jason said, laughing as they reviewed the footage. "I might have to hire you for my next movie." Throughout the day, Jason made sure to spend quiet moments with Fiona, listening to her stories and learning more about her journey. Fiona shared how his films had helped her through the darkest days, giving her the strength to keep fighting. "You don't realize how much you've done for me," she said. Jason, visibly moved, replied, "You've done more for me today than I could ever do for you." Your strength is incredible." As the day drew to a close, Jason gathered Fiona's family in the living room for one final surprise. "I know this won't change everything," he said, pulling out an envelope. "But I hope it helps." Inside was a check large enough to cover Fiona's medical expenses and ensure the family wouldn't have to worry about finances during such a difficult time. Fiona's mother, overcome with emotion, began to cry. "You've already done so much," she said. Jason shook his head. "It's the least I can do," he said softly. "Fiona has given me more than I could ever give her." Before leaving, Jason knelt by Fiona's side once more. "You've inspired me in ways I can't even describe," he said. "Thank you for letting me be a part of your story." Fiona, her voice trembling, replied, "Thank you for being my hero, both on and off the screen." As Jason walked out the door, the family hugged Fiona tightly, their hearts full of gratitude. The day had been more than a dream come true. It had been a celebration of Fiona's strength, love, and the joy she brought to everyone around her. Fiona passed away peacefully a few weeks later, surrounded by her family. In her final days, she spoke often of the incredible day she spent with Jason, cherishing every moment and sharing the story with anyone who would listen. "He made me feel like I mattered," she told her family. "Like I was more than just a girl fighting cancer." Jason stayed in touch with the Millers, sending flowers and a heartfelt letter on the day of her funeral. In interviews, he spoke about how meeting Fiona had changed his perspective. "She reminded me of what's truly important in life," he said. "It's not about fame or money, it's about the connections we make and the lives we touch." Fiona's story, shared on social media and news outlets, inspired millions around the world. Fans praised Jason for his kindness and humility, calling him a real-life hero. The short action film he made with Fiona was shared widely, serving as a poignant reminder of the joy and courage she embodied. It was an ordinary afternoon on the busy streets of Los Angeles when a police officer pulled over a sleek black car for speeding. As the driver rolled down the window, the officer began his routine questioning, unaware of who he was about to confront. But what started as a standard traffic stop quickly turned into a heart-stopping moment when the officer realized the man behind the wheel was none other than Jason Statham, the Hollywood action star. What followed was an unexpected series of events that left the officer, and everyone involved, completely stunned. Jason Statham, known for his love of fast cars both on and off the screen, was on his way to an event in downtown Los Angeles. Driving his custom-built Aston Martin, Jason was enjoying the open road, unaware that his slightly heavy foot on the gas pedal had caught the attention of a nearby police officer. Officer Daniels, a seasoned cop with a reputation for being by the book, was parked at an intersection, running routine traffic checks. When Jason's car sped by, Daniels immediately turned on his lights and sirens, pulling the vehicle over a few blocks down. To Daniels, it was just another routine stop. He had no idea he was about to come face to face with one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Jason, dressed casually in a leather jacket and sunglasses, calmly rolled down his window as the officer approached. "Good afternoon, sir," Daniels began, his tone professional but firm. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Jason nodded, his trademark smirk barely visible. "I might have been going a bit fast," he admitted, his British accent unmistakable. The officer, not yet realizing who he was talking to, continued. "License and registration, please," he said, noting the sleekness of the car but still unaware of the driver's identity. As Jason reached into his glove compartment to retrieve his documents, Officer Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that the driver looked incredibly familiar. It wasn't until Jason handed over his license that the pieces began to click. Reading the name on the card, Daniels froze for a moment. "Jason Statham?" he muttered, his tone shifting. Jason chuckled, sensing the officer's realization. "The one and only," he said, leaning back in his seat. Daniels blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Wait, you're Jason Statham? Like the transporter, Fast and Furious and all that?" Jason nodded, his easygoing demeanor putting the officer slightly at ease. "That's me. Guilty as charged." For a moment, Daniels forgot about the speeding ticket entirely. "I can't believe this," he said, shaking his head. "My kids are huge fans of yours. They've watched The Meg about 10 times. Jason grinned. "Good to know I've got fans in the Daniels household." But just as the conversation seemed to lighten, Daniels remembered why he'd pulled Jason over in the first place. "Listen," he began, clearing his throat. "You were going well over the speed limit back there. I can't just let you off the hook because you're a movie star." Jason nodded, his respect for the officer growing. "Fair enough," he said. "You're just doing your job." As Daniels began writing up the ticket, a call came through on his radio. It was a report of a nearby incident involving a stranded motorist. A young woman with her 2 children stuck on the side of the road with a flat. Daniels hesitated, glancing at Jason before responding to the dispatch. "You should go," Jason said, reading the concern on the officer's face. "I'll be fine here." Daniels hesitated again before nodding. "Stay here. I'll be back to finish this up," he said, hurrying back to his patrol car. But Jason, never one to sit idly by, had other plans. As Daniels sped off, Jason decided to follow, his instincts kicking in. He arrived at the scene moments after the officer, pulling his car over and stepping out to offer his help. The young woman, visibly stressed, was trying to calm her crying children as Daniels inspected the flat tire. Jason approached with a calm smile. "Need an extra pair of hands?" he asked. Daniels, surprised but grateful, nodded. "If you're offering, I won't say no." Within minutes, Jason had rolled up his sleeves and was helping Daniels replace the tire. The young woman, recognizing Jason, stared in disbelief. "You're Jason Statham," she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. Jason flashed his signature grin. "That's me. But today, I'm just here to help." With the tire replaced, the young woman expressed her heartfelt gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you both," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you." Jason waved it off, his humility shining through. "Happy to help," he said. "Just glad you and the kids are safe." Daniels, impressed by Jason's willingness to step in, turned to him with a newfound respect. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Most people would have stayed in their car and waited." Jason shrugged. "It's what anyone should do. We've all got to look out for each other, right?" Back at the original traffic stop, Daniels made a surprising decision. "You know," he said, tearing up the ticket he'd started earlier. "I think we can let this one slide. Consider it a thank you for stepping up today." Jason laughed. "I wasn't expecting that, but I'll take it. Just don't tell the next guy you pull over. It'll ruin my reputation." The two shared a laugh, and Daniels couldn't resist snapping a quick photo with Jason before he left. "My kids are never going to believe this," he said. Word of the encounter spread quickly after the young woman shared her story on social media, complete with photos of Jason and Officer Daniels working together to change the tire. "Jason Statham isn't just a hero in the movies," she wrote. "He's the real deal." The post went viral, garnering millions of likes and comments from fans praising Jason for his humility and kindness. "This is why we love him," one comment read. "He's not just an action star, he's a genuine human being." For Daniels, the experience became one of the highlights of his career. "It's not every day you pull over a Hollywood star," he said in an interview. "But what impressed me most wasn't his fame. It was his willingness to help, no questions asked." Jason, true to form, downplayed the event when asked about it later. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time," he said. "And besides, it's nice to remind people that even action heroes know how to change a tire." It was supposed to be a regular boarding process for a first-class flight, when an incident involving NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal stunned everyone present. A woman, visibly upset, caused a commotion, insisting that Shaq couldn't possibly have a first-class ticket. But what Shaq said next turned the entire situation on its head, leaving the crowd speechless and teaching everyone a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. The airport terminal was bustling with activity as travelers lined up for their flights. Among them was Shaquille O'Neal, dressed casually in a hoodie and sweatpants, towering over everyone in the first-class boarding line. Despite his fame and unmistakable size, Shaq seemed to go unnoticed by most passengers. blending into the crowd as best as someone of his stature could. Nearby, a woman in her mid-50s, dressed in a tailored business suit, appeared increasingly agitated as the boarding process began. She kept glancing at Shaq with a look of disdain, whispering to the person next to her. "There's no way he's in first class," she muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Shaq, as always, remained calm and composed, scrolling through his phone and minding his own business. But when the gate agent announced that first-class passengers could begin boarding, the woman's frustration boiled over. As Shaq stepped forward with his boarding pass, the woman abruptly cut in front of him, waving her ticket at the gate agent. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp. "I think there's been a mistake. He doesn't belong in first class." The agent, caught off guard, glanced at Shaq, then back at the woman. "Ma'am, he has a valid ticket," the agent said calmly. But the woman wasn't having it. "There's no way," she said, her voice rising. "People like him shouldn't be allowed up there." The tension in the terminal was palpable as other passengers began to take notice of the scene. Some pulled out their phones to record, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. Shaq, still calm, turned to the woman and said, "Ma'am, is there a problem?" His deep, steady voice carried across the terminal, silencing the murmurs of the onlookers. The woman, emboldened by the attention, crossed her arms. "Yes, there is. First class is for people who belong there, not for people like you." The room seemed to hold its breath as Shaq took a step closer, towering over her, but remaining composed. "People like me?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" The woman faltered for a moment, realizing she was being put on the spot. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I mean, you're probably an athlete or something, right? First class is for business professionals, not celebrities who waste their money." At this, the crowd began murmuring, and even the gate agent looked uncomfortable. But Shaq didn't lose his cool. Instead, he smiled and said, "Ma'am, you're right about one thing. I am an athlete. But what you don't know is that I've worked hard to earn everything I have, and I don't judge people based on how they look or where they sit on a plane." The woman, clearly flustered, was about to respond when one of the other passengers, a young boy holding a basketball, stepped forward. "Mom, that's Shaquille O'Neal," he said excitedly. "He's one of the greatest basketball players ever." The woman froze, her face turning pale as the weight of her mistake began to sink in. "Wait, you're Shaq?" she asked, her tone now hesitant. Shaq chuckled. "Yes, ma'am, I am. And I'd be happy to give you an autograph for your son, if you'd like." The boy's face lit up, and he eagerly handed Shaq his basketball. As Shaq signed it, he turned to the crowd and said, "You know, this isn't about who sits where or what someone does for a living. It's about respect. We're all just trying to get to the same destination." The crowd erupted into applause, with several passengers shouting words of support. The woman, now visibly embarrassed, stammered an apology. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to." Shaq held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "It's okay," he said gently. "We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." As the boarding process resumed, Shaq approached the gate agent and quietly handed over his boarding pass. Then, in an unexpected twist, he turned to the woman and said, "You know what, ma'am? Why don't you take my seat?" The woman's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, I couldn't possibly." But Shaq insisted. "First class isn't about the seat. It's about the experience. And maybe this experience will remind all of us to treat each other with kindness." The gate agent, smiling, quickly made the switch, and Shaq proceeded to take a seat in coach. The other passengers watched in awe as the 7-foot-tall basketball legend squeezed into the smaller seat, his knees nearly hitting the tray table. But Shaq didn't seem to mind. He spent the entire flight chatting with the passengers around him, taking selfies, and even sharing jokes with the flight attendants. Meanwhile, the woman sat in first class, humbled by the experience and grateful for Shaq's unexpected generosity. By the time the flight landed, The story had already started circulating on social media. Videos of Shaq's calm response and generous gesture went viral, with people praising him for his humility and grace under pressure. "Shaq just taught us all a lesson in class, both on and off the court," one tweet read. The woman later issued a public apology, admitting her mistake and thanking Shaq for his kindness. "I misjudged him, and he showed me what true character looks like," she said. For Shaq, the incident was just another day of spreading positivity. In a later interview, he downplayed the event, saying, "I just wanted to remind people that we're all human. Doesn't matter where you sit or how much you have. What matters is how you treat each other." Shaquille O'Neal's actions at the airport remind us all of the importance of kindness, humility, and treating others with respect. His ability to turn a moment of conflict into a powerful lesson is an example we can all learn from. What part of this story inspired you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's all strive to be a little more like Shaq, kind, understanding, and always ready to lead by example.